Hi Rockstars, I'm Aly, your RockstarBarGirl, and this week's video is another requested bartender chat from one of the viewers. So hi Anna Banana, thank you so much for watching and for your question. So Anna wants me to talk about upselling, which is a really important thing. It's critical basically to what you do. It not only allows you to drive your sales, to show your competence, to show your spirit knowledge, to engage with your guests, but of course it increases your tips because it increases your bill. So anyway, let's step back a little bit because some of you might not know what upselling is. So upselling is simply the act of encouraging your guest to buy something other than your well or your cheapest spirits. Because take for example the vodka that's on your well, it's some no-name brand vodka, you know, that no one's ever heard of. You are almost definitely going to have a number of other vodka options at your bar that have different price points. So you're going to have a lot of opportunity to upsell when it comes to selling spirits. So in this video, we are going to talk a little bit about what upselling is and why we do it. We're going to talk about how to upsell, because there's not really a wrong way, but there's certainly a good way and then a great way to upsell. And then we're going to talk about the rare instances where you wouldn't want to upsell your customer, or you wouldn't want to bother with doing it. So let's get started. Okay, so first of all, why do we upsell? There are two reasons why we upsell our guests. One of them is important for them and the other is more important for you. So reason number one is, of course, we want our guests to have the greatest experience that they can have. And that includes having the best cocktail that they can have. So if you are taking care of a guest who would like a vodka soda, you want that vodka soda to be great. Even though it's a really simple drink, it's one that the guest has probably ordered and had a million other times, you still want it to taste good. You want it to be a good experience. And if you serve that vodka soda and it's incredibly harsh because the vodka in it is really cheap and really terrible, yeah, your guest is probably going to be fine. They ordered a vodka soda for a reason. They weren't necessarily looking for an incredibly crafted cocktail. You know, they just wanted vodka with some soda water in it. But if we can do something to make that drink any better, why not? So if we ask the guests if they would like one of our premium or call brands, that's a great way to not only engage with them and have conversation with them, but to also steer them in the direction of something that frankly is just going to taste better. You know, we can go back and forth all day long about whether certain spirits, because they cost more or whatever, are actually better than others, but at the end of the day, when it comes to your well versus your call and premium cocktails, then yeah, there's going to be a difference in the quality and a difference in the taste, and you are doing your guests a favor by steering them away from the well. The other reason why we upsell, the one that benefits us, the server or the bartender, is because the more the person's bill, the higher your tip should be. We all know that the industry standard is 15 to 20 or 18 to 20% of the bill. So if your bill is higher, then your tip should be higher, right? So it's in your best interest as a server or bartender to steer your guests away from the cheaper, less expensive well spirits and towards something that costs a little bit more. We're trying to increase the total bill so that we increase our total tip. I like my hat. Has anybody ever worked with pomegranate liqueur? Huh? I don't know, I got this hat for free back in the day. Anyway, so now let's talk about how to upsell and how not to upsell. And I'm going to talk about how not to upsell first. So there are a couple of things you want to avoid when you're upselling, because like I've had students, I've had trainees, people that I've worked with, sort of feel uncomfortable about upselling. People sometimes who haven't done it before are worried about selling too hard, or coming across like they're being shady, like they're trying to add more to somebody's bill in a way that's like deceitful. And I can totally understand that concern, but don't let that concern stop you from upselling. It's really, really critical to what you do. You must be doing it. But how do we avoid feeling like we've done something wrong to the guest by making their bill more? Well, so first of all, I would say don't be shady about it, ever. If someone orders a vodka soda, do not just grab the Grey Goose without running it by them first. Make the drink and then charge them for Grey Goose. You know, later on, when they're at the end of their night, they're ready to pay their bill, and especially if they're a little drunk, they look and see a bill that's way higher than they expected. You're gonna have some explaining to do, and it could get really awkward and make you look like you know, were doing something deceitful, whether that's what you were intending or not. So rule number one, the thing to avoid is being shady. If you would like to pour premium spirits for people, recommend premium spirits for them and let them make that choice, but definitely don't just stick it on their bill without getting their permission. Another way not to upsell your guest is to be too general. What I mean by that is, let's say a guest comes in and asks you for a vodka cranberry. The way you do not want to upsell them is by saying, sure, what type of vodka do you want? This question is too general, and you are almost always going to get the same answer, which is going to be, quote, I don't know, whatever's your cheapest. So you didn't really upsell there. You wasted the breath for nothing because you left the question too open-ended and too general. Your guest doesn't necessarily know what you carry, and now that you've reminded them that there's an option, of course, they're going to pick the cheapest, because if a particular brand mattered to them, they would have asked you for a Tito's cranberry or a Kettle and cranberry. They would have told you that when they ordered. Obviously, brand isn't really important to them. So now that you're giving them the option to say what does matter, the next logical thing is the price. So they're just gonna say whatever's cheapest, and you didn't really get an upsell there. On the other hand, being too informative is also a poor way to upsell. So on the one hand, we have what kind of vodka would you like, which is too open-ended and too general. And then you could be too overwhelming. So we'll try it again. Someone comes in and they ask for a vodka cranberry, and you say, sure, would you like Kettle One, Grey Goose, Tito's, Absolute, Stoli? Like, whoa, people are literally gonna stop you in the middle of what you're saying and just go, I don't, just whatever's on your well is fine. Because you just overwhelmed them with entirely too much information. And again, if this person was terribly concerned about what brand of vodka they were choosing, they probably would have mentioned that when they ordered or asked you if you carried that spirit. So overwhelming them with a super long list basically mentally just takes them back to exactly where they were when they started, which is just give me vodka, please. So, how do we upsell properly? The proper way to upsell a spirit after your guest orders a cocktail without giving a specific brand is to give your guest 2 or 3 options of that spirit and let them choose from there. It doesn't have to be your entire world of vodkas. It's okay if you just pick 2 or 3 of perhaps the most popular. When I do it, I like to give people a range. So I will typically throw out 2 or 3 spirits that are a combination of calls and premium. So there'll be some medium price spirits and some of the more expensive ones. For example, you guys have probably all heard of Grey Goose. Grey Goose tends to be one of the more expensive vodkas in any bar or restaurant. but you probably have also heard of Absolute and Stoli. These tend to cost more than your well, but are medium priced. They're what we refer to as call spirits. So if a guest asks me for a vodka cranberry and doesn't specify a brand, I will say something like, sure, no problem. Would you like Absolute, Stoli, or Grey Goose? I've given them a couple of medium price spirits. I've given them an expensive spirit, and now it's in their hands. When you do that, I would say 7 times out of 10, your guest will pick one of the 3 that you gave them. The other 3 out of 10 times, your guest is either going to go, no, do you have Kettle One? And they're going to realize that they do care about brands, they do have a preference, and there's something you didn't mention that they would like instead. In which case, if you have it, great. And if you don't, then let them know which of the brands you do have is similar. Okay? If they don't say, oh, do you have this? Then they will say whatever's on your well. I think that's pretty much all. So that leads me to my final point, which is when not to upsell. So that might seem like even like a weird thing, like why wouldn't I upsell if it's so important to my service? But there are certain times where bothering to upsell is going to, it's just going to cause more confusion or take more time for you than is necessary, or it's just going to be a waste of your energies. And probably the most obvious, I guess, situation where that could happen is when it comes to happy hours or any type of deal going on, like maybe you're doing a 2-for-1 on well drinks or things like that. When you're having like a happy hour where your wells are discounted, or a 2-for-1 special on a certain type of spirit, taking the time to upsell your guests is going to be a waste. People come to happy hour because it's happy hour, and when they order a vodka soda, they're doing so because they know that that's one of your happy hour options. And so, especially if your happy hour is really busy, to take the time to try to have that back and forth conversation about what spirit your guest wants, when at the end of the day they're just going to say something like, I don't know, which one's on your happy hour? It's going to kind of slow you down and waste your time. You can sort of safely assume that at a time like happy hour, everybody's there for the discounted option. The other situation where you might not bother to upsell, honestly, is just when you are entirely too busy or dealing with a guest that's got a lot of complicated things going on. You might choose to not have that conversation with the guest about what brand they would like, simply because it's slowing down your service. So obviously this should be sort of rare, right? Because you should be wanting to upsell all the time. But every once in a while, you will be really, really slammed, super busy. Maybe you're in the weeds, or you're dealing with a large party or a particularly complicated guest, where you get the impression that less is more. Sometimes you have guests where you realize pretty quickly that like the more questions you ask, the worse off you're going to be. It's easier to just give them their drink, take their money, and let them go about their business, either because they're drunk, or maybe they're not in a good mood, or whatever the case, or they're really busy, they're not really trying to pay attention to you, whatever the case may be. Every once in a while there will be a circumstance where it just doesn't make sense for your service to have more conversation than is necessary with a particular guest, in which case you might want to go ahead and avoid the upselling process and just make the drink as they requested it and go for your well. But the general rule of thumb is that if someone is ordering a cocktail with a spirit, you never just reach for your well option. You always upsell them. And the most effective way to do that is by giving them 2 or 3 of your call or premium options and letting them choose one. So I want to thank Anna Banana. Thank you, Anna, for your really good question. I hope this video was helpful. If there's anything that I left out or anything that you would still like me to cover, please let me know. I'll be happy to answer your questions in the comments. If you're not already following me on Instagram, make sure you do so at RockstarBarGirl, doing weekly bartender tips, discount videos, and glimpses into the life of a working bartender. And of course, if you found this video useful, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe. Otherwise, as always, I will check you in the next video. Bye, Rockstars.